All right, so the next lesson that we're going to be covering is the law of cosines. So the law of cosines can be used to solve a triangle if we know the two side lengths and the measure of the angle between them, or the length of all sides. So on here, we have these different formulas. So we have for triangle ABC, we have our standard form, and then we also have our alternate form. Okay, so the standard form is these ones here. If we have A, B, and C, it kind of maps it out for us. A squared is equal to B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cosine of A. And then so on. And then they give you the one where you're going to have to find the angle A. Okay, so pretty much we're just actually plugging in on here. I don't want you guys to get super confused or anything like that. It's just literally plugging everything in and solving. Okay, so if we look here, it says given triangle ABC with angle B equals 35 degrees, A is 5 and C is 6. Okay, and they want us to find B. So if we're finding B, that means that we're going to have to use this formula right here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that down. So it is B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2 times A times C cosine of B. Okay, and then let me go ahead and scroll up. So we know that big B, which is angle B, is equal to 35. So that's where I'm going to have to plug in the 35 is right here. Okay, and then we know that little a is 5. So little a, this is little a here, and little a here. Little a appears 2 times. And then we have little c, so little c is right here, and right here is where we're going to have to plug it in. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let me take out my pens. We have b squared equals, instead of a, we're putting in a 5 squared plus, instead of little c, we're putting in a 6 squared, minus 2 times 5 times 6 cosine of big B. Big B is 35. Okay. And then all we got to do is put all of that in our calculator exactly the way we see it. Let me go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. And then we bring out a calculator. So this calculator I got on Delta Math. You can do the same. Let me go ahead and make this a little bit more even. Just so I have more space to write. Okay, so I'm going to put this in my calculator. I have 5 squared plus 6 squared. I want you guys to see the way I put in the calculator. That way you guys are putting it in correctly. So 2 times 5 times 6. And then here, I'm going to go ahead and press functions. And on functions, we're using our cosine function. We need to make sure, if you notice here, the degrees is highlighted in green, that our calculator is in degree mode. So that's good. Back, and then 35. We hit enter, and this gives me 11.8. Okay, so we're not done just yet, because this tells us b squared equals 11.8. So we have one more step. Because the b is squared, we do have to take the square root. So then this is going to give us b equals, so on my calculator, I'm just going to press square root and then answer, so that it puts the answer that we got previously in there. And it gives me 3.44. And I don't think they give us units, so I think that's good. And it says to the nearest tenth, so I'm just going to put 3.4. All right, this next one, it says given triangle ABC with A equals 6, B equals 5, C equals 7, find angle C. Okay, so this time we are looking for angle C. So if I look here, I'm going to go ahead and make this smaller. I am going to be using this formula right here. Okay, and so here, I'm going to copy it down. I have cosine of big C equals A squared plus B squared minus C squared over 2 times A times B. Oops, sorry, I was just trying to make this longer. Okay, so now we're ready to, let me zoom back in. Now we're ready to start plugging in. Sorry, my phone was ringing. Let me erase this ugly line. There you go. All right, so then we know that little a is 6. So instead of little a here, we're going to plug in a 6. And then we know that little b is 5. So instead of little b, it appears 2 times. And then we're going to subtract the c squared. So then instead of c, we know it's 7. So we're going to put in a 7 there. Okay. So let me go ahead and write this all out. We have cosine of big C equals A, I'm going to put a 6 squared, plus, instead of B, I'm going to put a 5 squared, minus C, we're going to put a 7 squared, over 2 times A times B. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and put all of that in our calculator exactly the way we see it. Okay, so here I am going to put the division sign already. That way I put everything on top, so it'll be 6 squared plus 5 squared minus 7 squared, and then on the bottom is going to go 2 times 6 times 5. We hit enter, and that gives us 0.2. Okay, so cosine of our big C is equal to 0.2. Okay, now remember, when we're solving for the angle, we have to use the inverse cosine. So the way I remember it, or I teach it, that's going to cancel out this cosine, so that means that we're going to have to take the inverse cosine of 0.2, and that's going to give us angle C. So I'm going to press here function. I'm going to make sure I use the inverse cosine because we're looking for the angle of 0.2. And this gives me 78.4. They do want us to round to the nearest degree. So the measure of angle C is equal to 78 degrees. Alrighty. So then this is where it does get a little bit tricky because you are going to find problems where they're going to ask you for all the angles, or and in this case they give us all the sides, and they don't have it in A, B, and C. So my suggestion is you change it A, B, and C yourself, okay? Do not keep it like that because it's going to make the formulas a little bit complicated. So here, for F, instead of F, because it's E, F, G, H, it's already in alphabetical order, I'm going to make this an A, I'm going to make this a B, I'm going to make this a C, okay? The same with this, I'm going to make this a big A, I'm going to make this a big B, and I'm going to make this a big C. So do not use the letters that they give you. Go ahead and swap them out. But you do need to remember, if you use A for F, then when it's asking you for the answer, that you do substitute back. Okay? So then from there, we have little a, little b, little c. So that means we need to find one of the angles. So I'm going to go ahead and find angle A first. So I'm going to go ahead and copy down that formula. Okay. So it is, I'm trying to memorize it. Cosine of big A equals, okay, it's going to be b squared plus c squared minus a squared over 2 times b times c. All right, so then from there, we are going to, let's see, plug in. Okay, so based off of this information, we know that little a is equal to 6, so little a appears only one time. Little b is equal to 12, little b appears 2 times, and little c is 15, and it appears 2 times. Okay, so let me go ahead and plug all of that in. We have cosine of big A equals b squared, that's going to be 12 squared, c is 15 squared, minus a squared is 6 squared, over 2 times 12 times 15. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of that in my calculator. Start with the division sign so that I make the fraction, and on the top I get 12 squared plus 15 squared minus 6 squared, and on the bottom it's 2 times 12 times 15. Enter. Gives me 0.925. So cosine, I'm going to write it right here, cosine of big A is equal to 0.925. Okay, so in order for us to solve for A to get the cosine to the other side, when we move it to the other side, we use the inverse cosine. So cosine inverse of 0.925. Okay. So that's going to give me the measure of angle A. So I'm going to go ahead and hit functions. I use the inverse cosine of 0.925. I hit enter. That gives me 22.33. But they want us to, so the measure of angle A is equal to, they want us to round to the nearest degree, so it'll round to 22 degrees. So here I'm going to put 22 degrees. Okay. So next we're going to find angle B. So to find angle B, I'm going to go ahead and write the formula. It's going to be cosine of big B. Go ahead and slice this. Equals, it's going to be a squared plus c squared minus b squared over 2 times a times c. Okay, and then instead of a, remember we are going to plug in a 6. So where we see the a's, we're going to plug in a 6. B, we only see B once, and that's we're going to plug in a 12. And then C, we have here twice, which is 15. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and plug in all of those numbers where they belong. So cosine of big B, that's what we're looking for. A squared is 6, so 6 squared plus B squared, no, C squared is 15 squared minus B squared, which is 12 squared, over 2 times 6 times 15. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put all of that in my calculator. So I start with the division sign. On the top, we have 6 squared plus, oh, that's not a plus, plus 15 squared minus 12 squared over 2 times 6 times 15. We hit enter, that gives me 0.65. So that means that cosine of big B equals 0.65. Okay, now remember to move the cosine over to the other side to solve big B, we have to use the cosine inverse because we're looking for the angle, 0.65. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in my calculator. I have functions, inverse cosine of 0.65. Enter, that gives me 49.4. So that is going to round to 49 degrees. Okay, and then last, to find angle C, I'm not going to use this formula again because since we already know two angles of a triangle, we know that they should all add up to 180. So 22 plus 49 plus whatever the measure of angle C is should add up to 180. So to solve for the measure of angle C, we have to take 180 and we have to subtract the 22 and we have to subtract the 49. That gives me 109. So 109. Now the next section. Okay, so here it gives us L equals 7, K equals 9, and J equals 34. Oh, I forgot to tell you guys on this one. Since we changed the letters to A, B, and C, just make sure you go back and erase it or figure out which answer goes with which. So F, G, H, this is F, G, and H. Okay, so just be careful with that. So on here we have L, K, and J. So I'm going to go alphabetical order, J, K, L. So instead of J, we're going to put an A. K would be the B, and then L would be the C. Okay, because that's the order, our alphabetical order. So then you said J is A, so it's going to be a capital A. K is a capital B, and then L is a capital C. Okay, that way we don't get anything mixed up, but you will see this on your Delta Math. They're going to change up the letters on you, so that's why I wanted you guys to practice it first. Okay, so then from there, in order for us to find one of the angles using the signs, if we notice here, we have to know all of A, B, and C. Okay, so we can't use those ones. So then if I look here, since we know big A, angle A, then that means that we're going to have to use this first one right here that has cosine of big A. Okay, that's where we gotta start. So it'll be A squared equals B squared plus C squared. We write it down. A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cosine of A. Minus 2BC cosine of A. Okay. Sorry about that. Oh. All right, so we don't know what little a is. That's what we're looking for. Okay. So we do know that little b is 9. Okay, remember we changed the letters and the little b appears right here as well. Then we know that little c is 7 and little c appears here and here. And then we also know that big A is, oh, that's pretty dark. Big A is 34, so instead of big A, I'm going to put 834. Okay. So we have A squared equals, B is 9, so 9 squared plus 7 squared minus 2 times 9 times 7 cosine of 34. Alrighty, so I'm going to plug that in my calculator exactly the way I see it. So 9 squared plus 7 squared minus 2 times 9 times 7 times cosine of 34. We hit enter, that gives me 25.5. So a squared equals 25.5. Now we're not done with a yet. We do need to take the square root to solve for a. So a equals, in my calculator, I'm going to put the square root, and then I'm going to hit answer so that it uses all the numbers, and we get the most exact answer. So 5.05 would round to 5.1. So here I can fill in the 5.1. Okay, so now we're ready to find the measure of angle B and C. So to find the measure of angle B, it's going to be cosine of big B equals a squared plus c squared minus little b squared all over 2 times 8 times c. Okay. Now remember, we just finished finding a. We found a is 5.1. So instead of a, we're going to be putting in 5.1. B is 9. Oh, I shouldn't have done that color. Whoops, sorry, because I had already used it. B is 9, so here's B. B only appears once. And then little c is 7, so little c appears twice. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start plugging those in. So cosine of big B equals, instead of little a, we know that is 5.1 squared plus 7 squared minus 9 squared over 2 times 5.1 times 7. Okay, so here, division, we have 5.1 squared plus 7 squared minus 9 squared over 2 times 5.1 times 7. Interesting. It gives us a negative number. I hope we don't regret this. So here it might be cosine of big B equals negative 0.08. We move the cosine to the other side by using inverse cosine to solve for B. And then we go ahead and plug this in. Inverse cosine of the answer. We hit enter. There you go. Okay, we're good. 94.8, which is 95. I think it's negative because it was bigger than 90 degrees. So B equals 95 degrees. Okay. 1 second, guys. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Because I was recording my I was like, uh-oh. Okay.
I was glad to get the other box. I was like, I'll just wait.
Uh-oh. Thank you. All right, sorry. Okay, so then last, we're just gonna go ahead and find angle C since we already know the other two. We're just gonna do 180 minus 95, which is the one that we just found, minus the 34, which is the one that they gave us. So 180 minus 95 minus 34, enter. That gives me 51 degrees. And that's it. Thank you guys. Bye.